I'm Katherine Johnson, 55 years old. I'm a divorced wedding planner who split up with my husband 10 years ago. For 7 years before the divorce, my husband and daughter continually ignored me. As soon as she graduated from college, my daughter started living on her own. Despite being ignored, I felt it was my responsibility to raise her until she graduated, so I chose to stay. However, once she was independent and I divorced my husband, I left the house with my son. It's been 10 years since the divorce, and back then, my son had just started high school. I still feel a sharp pain in my heart when I think back to those days. But by living each day to the fullest, that pain gradually faded away. Now, a name I hadn't seen in 10 years suddenly appeared on my phone. Hello? You still sound as dreary as ever. A voice filled with disdain responded. It was my ex-husband. After 10 years, what could he possibly want to talk about? I replied with the bare minimum. I'm at work right now. Wow, you're working. Lucky, someone actually hired you. My ex-husband always looked down on me. Maybe it was his chauvinism, needing to feel superior. In reality, he never contributed financially, indulging in gambling and debts while I worked to make ends meet. Remembering this makes my blood boil. I wanted to hang up immediately. But he's reaching out after 10 years. It must mean something. Suppressing my emotions, I continued the conversation. What do you want? I didn't want to raise my voice while working. Just calmly and in short words. He then began talking about his own needs again. Mireille is getting married. It'll look bad without a mother. Come back just for that. This was typical of my ex-husband. He was such a bastard, concerned only about appearances. Even after 10 years, he still cared about such things, trying to involve his ex-wife. Despite everything, Mireille, now 32, is still my daughter. I've never stopped thinking about her. Even though I was ignored for 7 years. But considering our past, I couldn't just agree to his request because he said so. I can't help but hesitate to meet the owner of this voice I haven't heard in a while. Does she agree to this? He asked this as if it's the most natural thing. What kind of person is this man who demands this as if it doesn't matter? What? Agree to what? Does she agree to have your ex-wife, whom you ignored and divorced, attend their wedding? Does this man really not understand? His response made everything clear. Can't you just listen to me? A divorced couple attending their daughter's wedding sounds quite good, doesn't it? He was still obsessed with keeping up appearances. To him, a former couple attending an event together was probably nothing out of the ordinary. While I was calmly thinking about this, he struck another blow. You must be working as a regular employee by now, right? Well, during our marriage, I supported you financially. It's only fair you contribute to Mireille's wedding expenses. What? I remembered working part-time and then as a full-time employee. I have been given an even higher position now. Back then, it wasn't for the sake of a comfortable life, rather, it was the result of me continuing to work to earn a living that I couldn't afford, and of course I have no recollection of having to pay for it. I don't mean to complain now, but I can't even say a word at how much his memories are being altered for his own convenience. Discuss the money directly with Mireille. I'm busy too. It all came down to public image and money for him. Even now, these conversations bring back painful memories. Shortly after we got married, I found out about my ex-husband's love for gambling. He earned a salary, but it never made its way home. The debts kept piling up without me realizing. While I was working hard to support our family and raise our kids, he accused me, all you care about is money, you don't care about me. He started coming home reeking of perfume, not bothering to hide or make excuses for his affairs. It seemed like cheating was just inevitable for him. It's all in the past now. Not a pleasant memory, but I try to move on. Trying to change the subject, I take a deep breath and ask him over the phone. What does Mireille say? What, you're still being ignored by Mireille? Being continually ignored by your own daughter, that's pathetic. He said mockingly, laughing as if he was enjoying this. Talking to this man wouldn't lead to anything productive. I'll talk to her directly. You should. I hope Mireille talks to you normally. He replied with a snicker and abruptly ended the call. I let out a deep sigh and turned my phone back on. On the day, I arrived early at the waiting room and sat down alone. Suddenly, the door opened and I heard footsteps I'd recognize even after 10 years. They stopped right in front of me. Why are you sitting here? What? There's no place for a mother who abandoned her child. His unnecessarily loud voice echoed in the small room. What do you mean? You heard it from Mireille, didn't you? What? There's no seat for a mother who hasn't properly talked to her daughter for 17 years. You're not wanted here. His words, spat out with a triumphant laugh, were predictable. I could imagine his expression without even looking. He must have been picturing a mother rejected by her daughter, after hinting at a joint appearance by the divorced couple over a phone call after 10 years. Such a typical move of his. Unaware that I'm thinking this, he continues his verbal attack, but inside, I can't stop laughing. Suppressing my emotions, I respond solemnly. I was just so curious. What? I was so curious, I just had to come. What? You're curious about your daughter's wedding after being ignored for 7 years and out of touch for 10? He says, laughing. Man, are you some kind of masochist? I paid some money, so let me have a peek. No way. Mireille doesn't care about you at all. You're just a wallet. He laughed uncontrollably, holding his stomach. Amidst his laughter, I asked him. Hey. What? What time is it? What? It's 11:30. Wasn't the ceremony supposed to start at 11? What? Even my ex-husband seemed to question why we were 30 minutes late. He started messaging Mireille. I've sent Mireille a message, just waiting for a reply now. He said, flopping onto a sofa. After a while, there was a soft knock. My ex-husband responded gruffly, and 2 figures slid into the room. Mireille and my son Ethan. My ex-husband, looking puzzled, addressed them. Mireille, why are you dressed like that? Mireille, who should have been dressed as a bride, was wearing a regular dress. Ethan, too, was casually dressed in a jacket and pants. And there I was, in my plain pantsuit. Looking baffled, my ex-husband asked Mireille with a blank expression the same question again. Mireille casually replied, What are you talking about? My wedding's already over. What? The wedding's over? Yes. What do you mean it's over? I don't understand. It's over means it's over, just like that. Right, Mom? Mireille said, smiling at me. Ethan and I returned her smile. My ex-husband looked at us as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Hey! What do you mean it's over? Do you know something about this? He demanded, turning to me. It's just as Mireille said. What? Like I said before, the 3 of us and the other family had the ceremony in Hawaii without you. Mireille calmly explained the main points to her father. His voice rose an octave in his flustered state. What? Hawaii? Mom helped us out, you didn't contribute a penny. Why would we want someone like you at the wedding? Of course, we wanted Mom there. Mireille added, stunning her father. My ex-husband, grasping at straws, asked. Then what's this today? Why are we all gathered in the wedding venue's waiting room? Mireille's eyes flickered as she looked at her father. Then coldly said, It's to cut ties with you. My ex-husband trembled slightly as he spoke. What do you mean by cutting ties with me? You ignored her with me for 7 years and then she left us. He clearly didn't expect such treatment from his daughter, whom he thought was on his side. He was visibly shocked. But Mireille was relentless. What? You didn't just ignore Mom, you ignored me and Ethan too. What? I wasn't ignoring Mom with you. I find it disgusting to be associated with a man who ignored his family, had an affair, and had a child out of wedlock. What? My ex-husband gasped at Mireille's words. He stared at her, his expression blank. In the dead silence, Mireille started talking. The reason I didn't talk to Mom was to keep an eye on you. What? You neglected your family for gambling and debts, had an affair, even had a love child. And you hit Mom behind our backs, didn't you? What? You thought we didn't notice? Any middle schooler would understand that. And when Ethan and I were nice to Mom, you hit her even more, didn't you? My ex-husband glared at me. You. I didn't do anything. It was you who didn't bother to hide your actions, even in front of the kids. What? He must have thought I turned my children against him. I never did that. Any action I took could have backfired on the children. I wanted to avoid that at all costs. That's why I never confide in anyone about his actions. Looking back, maybe I should have secretly sought help. But back then, I was overwhelmed. I thought if I just endured, it would be enough. But my children didn't accept that. They each, in their own way, wanted to help and became involved. I knew you were abusing Mom since I was in elementary school. What? Since then? You might have thought we were asleep, but your loud yelling woke us up, whether we liked it or not. What? But as an elementary or middle schooler, there was nothing I could do. So, I decided once I was in high school, I'd save Mom. I ignored Mom to keep an eye on you. I thought if you had an ally, you wouldn't dare hit Mom. So, to protect Mom, I decided not to talk to her. She knows that. What? She knows? It was a strategy we all came up with. What? He hadn't expected us to be in cahoots. His face turned pale and twisted. I wonder what my children are thinking. Ignoring that, Mireille continued. I pretended to be on Dad's side to keep him in a good mood for safety. In exchange, I made sure Ethan was always with Mom. In case you tried to hit her, Ethan, being a boy, could protect her. What? Ethan was just an elementary or middle schooler back then. He couldn't have stopped me. My ex-husband's words made me chuckle. What are you laughing at? Nothing. Just contempt? Disgust? Thinking about how you're always bluffing. What? See, you always get worked up so easily. You were always afraid of Ethan, right? Because he could see through you and shut you down with his words, even when he was little. What? I knew you avoided Ethan as much as possible. You were running away from him, even though he was just a kid, because he was smart. My ex-husband blushed in embarrassment and clammed up. That's why. I stayed by your side, and Ethan stayed with Mom. That way, you'd never dare lay a hand on her. I never realized that. He was visibly shocked. Mireille spoke ruthlessly to him. Well, of course. What? You became more and more of a stranger, finding your place elsewhere. You were so oblivious, you didn't even see your own family, did you? Remembering that time doesn't hurt me anymore. But Mireille's words started to blur my vision. Ethan gently touched my shoulder and continued. Dad. What? About what we talked about earlier, the affair and having a child. You're not denying it, huh? Well, even if you denied it, it's the truth, and there's nothing you can do about it now. Why are you bringing this up? My ex-husband could only give a vague response to Ethan's unexpected turn in the conversation, and Ethan pressed on. Did you know I was working a part-time job in high school? Part-time job? You didn't know, huh? Mireille was working part-time too. What? Some dad was never home, never put money into the household, just messing around. We'd both had to work part-time in high school to help Mom. I didn't know. Of course, you didn't. As I said earlier, you never really saw us or Mom. So you didn't notice that Mireille was fooling you. My ex-husband fell silent at Ethan's words. And I worked in the kitchen of a restaurant, you know. You used to come there a lot with a woman. What? Sometimes during the day, sometimes at night. You brought a little kid with you too, right? What? That's your love child, isn't it? What? You'd loudly say things like this kid's gonna grow up to be handsome like me and stuff. It was so embarrassing. No! Nobody wants to be like you. Ethan snorted. He had no idea his son had seen him cheating and even seen his love child. My ex-husband started sweating and breathing shallowly. While glancing at him, I casually asked, "How are May and Ken doing?" I threw out names he probably didn't expect me to know, and he gasped. How did you? How? Do you want to know? What? After we divorced, it might not have been a big deal for you, but I had to go through a lot of paperwork. It's impossible not to notice, especially since you acknowledge them. My ex-husband was silent again. I didn't feel disappointed anymore, but I wondered if he thought he could hide it by keeping quiet. Eventually, when he's gone, all sorts of issues will fall on the children due to inheritance. Regardless of the divorce, the children are still related to him by blood, and so is the child he acknowledged. He probably never thought that far as a parent. Well, I knew it, but it was still a shock. You never thought about me or the kids. My ex-husband remained silent, no matter what was said. Was he really unable to say anything after all this? Pinned under the gaze of the three of us, my ex-husband didn't even try to make excuses, maybe due to his useless pride. I knew it. But still, what was he thinking during all those years of marriage, of family life with us? He probably thought the onslaught was over. He let out a breath, relaxing his shoulders. But he wasn't let off so easily. And on top of that, you were begging that woman for money too, weren't you? Are you just terrible? Ethan said with disgust. What? What are you talking about? Not what are you talking about. You're even messing with the company's money now. Mireille's unexpected words made him freeze as he stared at her. Don't say it's a lie. I didn't do that. Really? Still playing dumb? You can't escape this. What are you talking about? Where's the proof? His red-faced shout echoed in the room. Ethan doused his fire with a cool reply. What? You left evidence everywhere, blatantly in the company's books. What? His face was drained of color. The financial audit of your company is being handled by my husband. Mireille added. My ex-husband lost all expression, probably never imagining the man he thought he'd congratulate today as Mireille's husband was the one exposing his embezzlement. I was shocked when I heard it too. Mireille's husband, a certified public accountant, was involved in auditing my ex-husband's company. The chief accountant, who happened to know Mireille's husband's firm manager, brought up recent suspicious financial activities, leading to his involvement. The more we looked, the stranger it got. Did you really have to embezzle $1 million for your debts and secret child support? Mireille's words hit him hard. He must have been overwhelmed with why and how could this happen. Ethan mercilessly delivered the final blow. You know, this is a crime. My ex-husband froze completely. His body trembled slightly. As we watched him, Mireille said, That's why I wanted to end it. What? I'm married now, connected to another family. I don't need a criminal in my family, and I wanted to reset everything I've been carrying all these years. That's why I asked Mom to prepare this room today. Why can she arrange this room? This is a wedding venue, right? He turned his gaze towards me. I spoke without meeting his eyes. This place, it's my company. What? Your company? I started in this industry as a part-timer, and after gradually gaining experience, I was promoted, and from there I worked hard to learn and build connections. I entered this industry before we divorced. A little before he started ignoring me. He never knew or cared to know what company I worked for or what I did. He didn't even try to find out. So, he never knew I've been in this industry since then. It was a terrible situation. But it led to good connections for me. And 2 years ago, I guess, I started this company with someone I've worked with for a long time. Who? Someone you've worked with? The president of the parent company, and now, my husband. What? He was speechless, as expected. I guess so. He always thought he was above his ex-wife, who is now a president's wife and a subsidiary company president. Shaking, he managed to ask us. Mireille is... What? Mireille is on my side, right? What? When we divorced, you cut ties with her, right? That's right, isn't it? He shouted desperately, but cold words rained down on him. Isn't that obvious? Like I said earlier, I ignored Mom on the surface for 7 years just to protect her. It was only superficial, I never really ignored her. Besides, you were hardly ever home. What? You only saw what was on the surface, right? Whether I was ignoring Mom or not. Well, that's... And when I graduated from college, you two got divorced. That's when I made my choice, right? To go with Mom. That's a lie, right? It's true. Someone like you, a cheating, abusive, embezzling jerk, just disgusts me. You have no idea how much that 7 years messed with my mental health. Mireille's voice, which had been so strong, started to tremble, her eyes filling with tears. Mireille. I'm so sorry. I couldn't help but hug her. It's okay. Mom was always there, silently protecting us from any harm. Taking on everything, standing strong in place of a deadbeat dad who wouldn't contribute or even come home. Mireille hugged me back, her arms trembling, sobs echoing against my back. Ethan gently rubbed our shoulders, saying, Anyway, Dad, you're busted. What? Actually, I'm involved in that audit too. What? I'm a certified public accountant now, working under Mireille's husband. You mean you're with her husband's firm? Yep, so I know all about your dirty deeds. I've been looking back, and it's been going on for quite a while, hasn't it? It's more than just $1 million, right? What? Really? Well, what you spent it on isn't my concern, but the fact you used someone else's money doesn't change. My ex-husband fell silent. At that, I pulled out my phone and quickly sent a message to my husband. A few minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Several men approached my ex-husband in silence as he responded. What must he be thinking? He hesitantly put out his handcuffed wrists. I averted my gaze. The soft click of the handcuffs echoed. Since then, my ex-husband has been cooperating with the police investigation. During this, they discovered he had been abusing the child he had with his mistress. Of course, he was rearrested. And the mistress too. The child, still in middle school, is now in a child protective facility, the police informed me. Hearing this, Ethan had an indescribable look on his face. Something wrong? Well, Mom might not like it, but... I want to meet that kid. What? I knew Ethan often saw those three at his part-time job. I thought it might be a sentiment, but he said if I had noticed something back then, maybe that kid wouldn't have been hurt. Ethan seemed to feel responsible for what had happened. Also, yeah, you may not like it, but he's technically my brother, right? Ethan said, looking away. Perhaps since that time 10 years ago, he had felt a vague sense of brotherhood towards the little boy. Indeed, he's all alone now. Yeah. Honestly, I didn't feel great about it. That child was the result of betrayal. But he's alive and growing. I've made my kids go through unnecessary hardships. Part of that responsibility is undeniably mine. So, let's do what I can now. Shall we go meet him sometime? Ethan's face lit up with a smile. How the boy would react or receive this, I don't know. But I want to see the smiles of the children around me as much as possible. I gently stroked Ethan's head. To move forward, I'll ask someone who knows. I took out my phone, opened my history, tapped the name of someone important, and listened to the dial tone.